Joining us, I got a list, dude. He's a podcaster. He's an entrepreneur. He's a author. He's an investor. He helps people get out of their financial troubles. He's a witness to 9/11. I mean, dude, the man has many hats, and we're glad to be here because he always knocks it out of the park. We're glad he's here, excuse me. So very excited to have him here. Please welcome back for the another time of hopefully more times, Richard Grove. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing wonderfully well, Johnny Xavier. Nice to see you guys. And wearer of many hats. I'm wearing an Alex Jones hat, support Infowars.
Nice.
He
So,
was
so
mentor back in the day.
what do you, I don't want to jump too quick into it, but what are your thoughts on Alex Jones right now, Ozempic Jones?
Well, I think he's been going through a lot of changes, right? But I just traditionally look at it, not the messenger. I look at the message. In the history of like Infowars, back when I encountered them in 2002, 2003, their guests, their authors, their movies, all those things provided tangible handholds on the landscape where you could start to dig in and get the documents, ladies and gentlemen. So,
Fire.
like, I spent a long time getting all the documents that are even mentioned or in broadcasts like that, or films I watched, or other books that refer to other books. Like, if you read Zbigniew Brzezinski, he's right here somewhere. He's hanging out. Technotronic Era. You can go to a footnote in there and you can discover Professor Anthony Sutton, who then sets you free about the Federal Reserve, the skull and bones, the families that funded communism and the Nazis at the same time, and all this sort of stuff. And so Zbigniew Brzezinski's like, if you want to know about Soviet development with Western technology, the premier source is Anthony Sutton. So just like learning how to find the footnotes and all those sort of things. So like, messengers are fallible. We're all fallible human beings, but it's our legacy of what we do with our 168 hours every week that is kind of like the leave behind. And when they censored Jones off of YouTube, that's 35,000 hours or, 35,000 videos of authors and researchers and 9/11 evidence and Oklahoma City evidence and a whole bunch of stuff they don't want the public knowing about in the future. So I've always tried to like play backup. If you got center fielders going to catch a ball, I'm the right fielder running over behind Jones. It's like I got the documents just in case they get lost or deleted. And yeah, so that's basically how I hold that. But
I
one of my
do,
yeah.
I do think it's very important to save documents. If you're on the internet and you see something you like, screenshot it, download it, whatever you can, because it's 1984. Like, good luck finding anything about the New York City Police Department and Anthony Weiner's laptop. That has been wiped off the internet. You can't find any articles on that discuss any of that stuff. It's all gone. And I remember it, dude. I remember looking at stuff, and it even got even deeper on that. It even got deeper. It was I remember I would download, I think I told the story before, but I want to tell it again. I downloaded all these videos off of the internet, and I put them on a file on my laptop. And then I remember, like, a little ways down the line, I would go back and try to find this one video, and I found it, and I clicked on it to play, and the audio was gone. And then with the other videos, all the audio is gone. And
Could
I
just
was
be an
like,
audio codec problem.
come on, dude, we're a conspiracy show. It's much more fun to think that the lizards got into my computer and erased
They
all
might
the
have, dude. They might
audio,
have.
you
You
know?
know? Yeah. I mean,
So
there's a lot of evidence that's been deep six from the internet in the past 20 years. I mean, it used to be common knowledge about World Trade Center 1993 that it was done by the FBI and an Egyptian Muslim terrorist type guy that they paid. And he thought he was being paid to put a fake bomb in there, but the FBI had him put a real bomb in there. His name's Imad Salem. And there used to be widely available on the internet the 24-minute tape of him recording his FBI handler, Special Agent John Antisev, having a whole conversation about like hotel expenses, travel expenses for doing the op. And he's like, you guys haven't paid me and you gave me a real bomb and I thought it was supposed to be a fake. Like he says it all right there. And that was like brought to trial. It was like a Ron Kuby trial about one of the terrorists back in the day. But those type of inconvenient narrative facts are really good for finding the truth. Those little contradictions that they leave laying around, but they've learned over the past 20 years. I mean, I use Internet Archive, Wayback Machine more now than ever before because the Washington Times, Washington Post, all these places, New York Times, they like to hide stuff either behind a paywall or they like to deep six it. Like there's a famous article. I don't know. I try to make it famous. Washington Times did an article on George Soros and his origins and who funded his quantum fund in 1969. And it says in there, Edmund de Rothschild, Bank Privé of Switzerland. It's very clearly stated.
Yeah.
And yet, and this is only a 2011 article. It's not super old. So 2011, they're like, we can say this comfortably that George Soros got his start and is backed by the Rothschilds. But within a couple years, and you can see Internet Archive tracking, like, now it's gone, you know? And so I take people to those links all the time, and it's a great starting point for them to start on their kind of red pill journey, because otherwise you're schooled into this circle, and anything outside that circle you just think is conspiracy theory. And there's a lot of these things that actually have facts and are actual and have artifacts and evidence that can be studied and passed around. And when you pass the evidence and artifacts around, it closes the knowledge gap for people. They're no longer like, because I found this out because I was incredulous. I heard about the Rothschilds. Oh, that's a cliche. Or the Rockefellers, right? And then I actually looked into it. I was like, you couldn't possibly over cliche this. Like, this is so substantial and yet so widely not known. And anyone you try to bring it up to, oh, that's a pejorative, you're anti-Semitic, all these types of things, right? Like, you couldn't have a conversation with Douglas Murray, who's never been there, about the Rothschilds, even though I have studious books from Hebrew University about Rothschild colonization of Palestine in the 1800s. Like, I have a bunch of resources. This is history, should be weighed on the scales, but they can't let it into the narrative because that's what they say. Like, you're going to let the sewer people out, right? And I thought immediately of tinfoil hat, and I'm very thankful to be here. Thank you.
We are the sewer people. We should
You're
make that
willing
into a
to-
T-shirt, by the way.
You could,
Just a
dude. That's
picture
a
of
good
all of us,
t-shirt.
sewer people.
Tell them where to send it. Do you have a PO box? Tell them where to send their. That's how Kurt Metzger gets a lot of his t-shirts. People sending them. He's got Operation Timber Sycamore. Like, there's a couple of them that we were talking about. I'm like, dude, I wanna have that one. Operation Popeye, the weather modification one from Vietnam. So, like, I'm not a graphic designer, but I have those ideas, and I think they're
I
good
love
for
it.
educating people.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm big on that too. Richard, so usually at the beginning of the show we let the guests give any of their websites or anything you want to promote where our listeners can find you. I know you've been on the show a couple times.
Oh yeah.
So in case there's some new people,
I got you a couple things. First off, I brought a gift for your audience. It's free and it will empower you. I made a masterclass on how to overcome your fear, reclaim your freedom, and learn some skills to, like, raise your position in life. Now, the URL, I'll just say it, universityofreason.com/fear is optional by Richard Grove, but you have to put hyphens between the words because they don't let you do spaces on URLs. So universityofreason.com/fear is optional by Richard Grove. And I gave Mark a link, so you guys actually have a link. So if that doesn't translate, if it doesn't obla to somebody, they can just click the link. So that is the first step in getting into, like, a red pill mentality of being willing to look at these things. Is the worst part is behind when you were naive and didn't know any of this stuff. Now you can say, oh, here's a conspiracy theory. Is there any validity? Yes or no? What are the artifacts? What is to be learned and drawn from this? Or no, there's no evidence or artifacts. Dismiss as arbitrary, move on, because there are real conspiracies to actually be analyzed, studied, rectified. There's a lot of injustice that is built up over the past 120 plus years, specifically by a group of people who brought us 300 million dead people by government, democide. It was a 1996 University of Hawaii study that showed 300 million people were killed by their government, not even in the wars, just killed by their governments. It's called the democide study. So learning these things and, like, who's behind such things, right? If you want to achieve world peace or ever, like, live as a free country again, we have to be able to demonstrate some courage and bravery, be bold, get over our fears, get over our learned helplessness, our negative self-talk, all these things that 15,000 hours of schooling indoctrinated really well into us. So, like, the fear is optional masterclass helps people self-liberate. And then once you self-liberate, be an autonomous, decentralized person out there doing good in the world, and the world's a better place. That's the idea.
yeah, and that link is below in the description, everybody. So please grab that.
And then I do podcasts on Sunday nights, which Sammy has been on.
Blessings.
I need to have you on again, bro.
Yeah, I'd love to do it.
Can I have my booker contact your booker?
Yes, or they can just hit me up. He doesn't book me. He
Oh, yeah?
he does
Okay,
a great
good.
job.
All
Just
right,
hit
all
me
right.
up.
All right, good.
He's
So,
sensitive.
Yeah, Grand Theft World podcast on Sunday nights from 9:30 to like the wee hours in the morning. Last week we had Owen Benjamin and John Bound from InfoWars, and we were tearing it up. And we just analyze the week's news, but we give you historical context from all these things I have around me collected to use as tools to beat the New World Order's ass, if it has an ass.
Yeah,
Or beat an ass.
I just did a wonderful episode with a very good friend of mine named Brian Callen and his
Oh, right on.
yeah, we love Brian. And Brian has a Achilles heel, and it is his inability to understand that the powers that be, the masters of mankind, for a very long time, and we can even get into whether they're still doing it, which I do believe, have controlled the data flow, the information. And back in the day before we're all self-publishing, whether it's content books or whatever it is, they controlled everything. It is my belief on why they hate comedians and they hate content creators because, like, we have Hibbler. I work with Hibbler on multiple projects now, and Hibbler puts out like studio level content. Like, it is like it could easily be put out by HBO or Netflix, the stuff that he puts out. That's their biggest fear
Yeah, the
is not.
democratization of technology is now in the hands of smart people. Go ahead, please.
Yes, but it's just that when they want to shut down the people that don't need the banker money to create art. Forever, banker money was in complete control of all art being produced at a high level. I mean, this P Diddy trial is just dudes giving up their cheeks for the opportunity to mumble rap, and it's just like that's where we are right now, and that is an old style, and that's why they're kind of freaking out. What I want to get into you before we start getting into everything you want to talk about is this Palantir stuff. We just did an episode with Seven Seas. It was a great episode.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I just don't know. Like, even with, Brian the other day, I go, "What's your thoughts on Palantir?" And he didn't really have an opinion on it because he hadn't heard a lot about it. And it gets into again with like these tech gods have created these algorithms that just silo us into this is the information, the only information we're getting, and we think that is all the information. And it's really not. It took me forever to get my Instagram algorithm to stop showing me tits and ass all the time. Now it's just great conspiracy videos. Now, but before it was just tits and ass, tits and ass, tits and ass, which I didn't like until I didn't like it, you know? I liked it until I didn't like it. What are your thoughts on all that?
All right, so I want to address the Brian Callen thing in a minute, but Palantir Technologies. First off, what is a Palantir? Does anyone know here?
Is it some from Lord of the Rings or
That's
something?
right. And what does it do?
I don't know what it does.
It lets you see the future.
Oh shit.
What is an oracle? What does Larry Ellison do over there?
He sees the future.
Oracle is something that sees the future. So there's a huge history behind this. So I'm going to take you over to my history blueprint. As I learned these things over the years, I started making a visual model. One of my favorite artists was Mark Lombardi. Did you guys have Arthur Quan Lee on? He's an artist.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Mark Lombardi was an artist who would have been on tinfoil hat all the time, except he's dead now, so you don't have to worry about that. He dies very
Aw.
suspiciously on 3/22, like the Skull and Bones holiday, 3/22 of 2000, right before 9/11. He was studying Skull and Bones and narco trafficking, money laundering in his art, right? So my art comes from, I was already doing the research and doing something, and then my buddy said, "Hey, this other guy did something like yours. You should check it out." I said, "I want to meet him." He said he's dead. He had just died like a year before, and I was like, "Okay." So what I'm going to show you is prolific and shareable and links to the internet evidence, whereas the drawings that Mark was doing was just pencil on the wall. So this is like a next evolution in homage to an artist who passed before his time. All right, so over here we got Palantir Technologies. It's funded by In-Q-Tel. It's a project of CIA and GCHQ, which is the British NSA, which is 50 years older than our NSA,
Yep.
who created our NSA. It's
Yep.
Okay, so the British have a system called the double cross system. It started in World War II. They call it the 20 Committee. It's two Roman numeral X's. So we called it X2 in America. That were the Americans working with the British. They over there called it the double cross committee, the double cross system. And there's a famous book by the guy who ran MI6 called John Cecil Masterman. He was the leader of MI6 during World War II. He wrote a book called The Double Cross System, in which he said that the British knew about Pearl Harbor and didn't forthrightly warn America because they wanted us to get into the war. But let's go back to Palantir because that's an interesting part of this whole Anglo-American establishment plan. Now, when you get into In-Q-Tel, these are technology companies being funded by CIA and other of the intelligence agencies out there. Maybe have a little Israeli money in there, but Eco Health Alliance had something to do with In-Q-Tel getting some funding, right? So the whole thing that just happened with the pandemic, there's a linkage there. But really, Palantir is part of a larger idea that I would call, from history's sake, technocracy. This movement starts back in the 1930s at Columbia University. Now, when you guys hear Columbia University, from now on, I want you to think King's College, New York, because it is part of the British education system. All the Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale. Yale is the East India Company's outlet here in America. Harvard, kind of the same thing. So they're training our ruling class, what they call a Mandarin class, from when they conquered China with opium over the years. They came back and put it on us. So now they've got this idea called technocracy. So it projects a future where it's ruled by algorithms and authoritarians. There is no currency. They change over the markets. And that's kind of like what they're on the verge of doing right now, because you see all these destabilizations going on. What do they have planned next? Well, there's a long history to it. So if we climb down in technocracy, there's Agenda 21 and a whole bunch of other things that come out of that. But mass surveillance is a huge part of that. Now, the idea of a panopticon was created at the East India Company under Jeremy Bentham. And he worked there and he created what he called a panopticon. It was a prison where everybody thought they were being watched all the time.
Yes.
Right? That's what they're doing with the technology and the social media and the phones and all this other stuff, right? It's a digital panopticon, which I'm pretty sure is also a Grand Theft World title episode. So panopticon is an idea that's cooked up by the East India Company. There's a bunch of guys from East India that had deleterious ideas for our freedom. Panopticon, that surveillance state that I was showing you, that comes out of Jeremy Bentham, and we could go into the whole history behind all the other things that are like legacies of that. But I want to get back to the point of the technical apparatus of Oracle and Palantir as we see them today. They're trickle downs from Macy conference meetings in the 50s to MK Ultra projects in the 60s to James Jesus Angleton being the Oracle at CIA and then being a mole for Israel and Britain and getting dementia. And they wanted like an electronic filing cabinet to lock away those secrets from prying eyes who could go into filing cabinets. They created something called the Relational Database Management System, RDBMS. That became a publicly traded company called Oracle. So from the 70s, the intelligence community has been working on creating the processing power and the networking power and the algorithms to do exactly what they're doing now. It didn't come out of nowhere. And 20 years ago, they were at the price, like I was a director of sales for an artificial intelligence company in 2003. So what AI in that market was looking for was sources of data to train their algorithms. Now, I worked for a company that had a learning algorithm and it could watch like stock trades on your servers and it would text you like the server's going to crash on Thursday. And if a bank loses $100 million of transactions per hour because the server's down, it's worth a lot of money to have this software. So I didn't know anything about banks or bankers, or I didn't know about the New World Order back then. So, you gotta pardon me. I didn't know about Alex Jones. So they were looking for a food source for all these AI algorithms. That's when total information awareness. So there's a group that was formed after 9/11. 9/11 is the excuse for a lot of these groups to be founded.
Yeah.
Info aware. I should be able to get to it. Total information awareness is this group right here. So it's a DARPA project. And the day it closes, a thing called Facebook is born.
Yeah.
So, right. So it was called LifeLog over there at Total Information Awareness.
Yeah.
They close it down. They got this guy Zuckerberg, and he's like, "Oh, I got Facebook." Right now, the brothers that he stole it from, maybe aside, right? It's very interesting how this kind of nobody at a college is going nowhere, like just happens to be a front man for a company that becomes one of the behemoths, like Bill Gates and a couple other people through time.
Yeah.
Larry Ellison,
LARPs.
right?
LARPs.
Larry Ellison's, right? So now you've got total information awareness turning into Facebook. What do people do with Facebook and MySpace? They put everything. Now, if I came to you and say, "Hey, I'm a spy. I want all your data," you'd be like, "Fuck off." But if I come to you and say, "Here's this thing," and it lets you watch videos or click links online, like we all saw phones as empowering. And for like 10 years this century, I didn't use a phone because like I was I was a little jaded after all that whistleblowing experience and seeing how things really worked, and then continuing to read about how things really work. I was like, I'm not going to give them that extra data. Facebook's not going to make an avatar about me because I'm not on Facebook. And then I found out through the Social Dilemma movie that they actually have an avatar, even though I don't use Facebook. They have one waiting for me to come over there.
That
So
because everybody tags you in it stuff and they assume you're someone's wife. You're a person, they just don't know who you are, but they know that so and so has a cousin that's always at these events and that's you.
that's like a takeout order that hasn't been picked up yet. They're just
Yeah.
waiting. It's on the shelf and it's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Zbigniew Brzezinski has this book. I think it might, no, he has a couple books. One was called The Choice, but he wrote one like 20 years earlier, America and USSR Divergence or Convergence, meaning should we go away from the Soviet system or get in bed with the Soviet system? And the wall hadn't fallen yet. So this is the heyday of like the separation and the segregation. And Brzezinski started writing papers on the Eastern Bloc in the early 60s. And then he got picked up by the Rockefeller brothers and they're like, hey, we want to hire this guy to do work for us. So just like Kissinger, like David Rockefeller gets Brzezinski, Nelson Rockefeller gets Kissinger, and together they have the bookends on American statecraft, right? So most people know Kissinger, fewer people know Brzezinski, but Brzezinski did Operation Cyclone and worked with Osama bin Laden and a whole bunch of other stuff. So Brzezinski is also staunchly anti-communist, and he was married into like the Polish prime minister's family, Edward Benes. So he has this interesting background. He's staunchly anti-communist. He starts writing about the other, like the East, the other side, and he said at that time, the Stasi, which was the East German secret police, which were notorious. I forget what the movie was. There's a movie a couple years ago about the spies are living in your ceiling, literally like listening. But it was really a good window into that time frame and what people went through. So what he said was the Stasi is able to collect all this data on people, rumors, innuendo, stuff from the neighbors, all this stuff, but they don't have the computer power to do anything with it. They can't marshal the data fast enough to actually get the drop and blackmail people, possibly, right? He doesn't say it like that, but that would be an implication.
Damn.
Right? So now you start building up not only the processors, but the database storage and then the algorithms. And they've been working on those algorithms since the early 80s. Like Steve Jobs talks about AI back in 1982, and he's like, here's what it's going to look like, right? So they have had plans that were well funded, well cloaked, going on, and then come out to us like masquerading like it's entertainment or this is for your convenience. But they got most people, they get most people out of the gate because literacy is a form of slavery until a method of critical thinking is consistently applied objectively by the reader. In other words, they teach us to read, but they don't teach us to think. So we're susceptible to believing anything we read. And that form of assumption is how 99% of people get got by the people who are in all these books that I've.
Glenn Greenwald's story comes out. We had talked about it on Broken Sim.
Do I want to know about it? Because I missed it. And I've heard people refer to it, but I'm not gonna.
We won't get into specifics.
Right,
I don't want to.
okay.
I don't want to.
I just heard there was kink involved, and I was like, I don't.
We'll say gay kink. Gay kink.
Okay, well, not
so
surprising.
We don't want to ruin your purity. So, I watched it again. I'm somebody. As long as you're not hurting people or stealing from people or hurting children, I'm not gonna get involved. I have a lot of problems in my life.
Consenting adults,
Oh, you did watch it?
No,
he said
I
again.
saw the stuff. No,
if you read the
Oh,
transcript,
you said I watched it. I thought you.
No. I didn't watch it. I saw what everyone saw, just his weird face. I didn't even hit the play on that video. I just saw face looking up, and that's all I saw. But for me, again, I don't care what consenting adults do. There's a whole argument, bleeds in everything they do. Okay, that's another discussion. But there's part of me that thinks it's a psyop as well, and that there's always been this talk of Glenn being more involved with things than people know, that his interceptor was a honeypot for the elites to know who's doing all this. I don't know. I'm just saying it. Is there any, I know you didn't look at it and maybe you haven't studied it, so I don't know if you can, give a take on it, but I want to know, do you think there's any chance that it's just a humiliation ritual to not destroy him, but to kind of blow him up even more?
45% chance.
Yeah.
All right, so here's my questions, because this is the same analysis that we could do on any story, right? There's a video, it makes certain claims, it's inconvenient to his future, allegedly, right? But it's also like, what does he speak out against, and what's going on over here, right? Who might want to apply some pressure to Mr. Greenwald? Now, what type of pressures have been applied to Glenn in the past? Because I'm familiar with his work, and I would like to treat this as like there's the message and the messenger. So we're going to set his message aside, which I often agree with, and we're going to look at the messenger, who I don't know too much about, but I heard he moved to Brazil with like his boyfriend or his husband a long time ago, right? So he founds The Intercept, which at the time was like avant-garde, cutting edge, like whistleblower type stories, right? The allegation that it could be a honeypot. Sure, because if WikiLeaks really wasn't a honeypot, you would think they need a honeypot out there. But maybe when it's created, Glenn doesn't know that it's a honeypot because he's a legit dude. Let's just say that. Maybe he works with some people who know it's supposed to be a honeypot, and at some point they push him out, just like they pushed out O'Keefe over at Veritas, right? They've got some people speckled.
Interesting.
They got some people speckled around that are like, hey, if he gets out of line, just push him out. Right. So that has gone on in recent memory, and O'Keefe
Oh,
is just
shit.
in the process of taking it back over at Veritas. So now you've got this idea that Greenwald was pushed out by Scahill et al. At one point, right? And then Greenwald opens his Substack and starts becoming very successful with, like, you know, having his own direct communication with the audience, not having YouTube as a proxy, which is a smart business move. And he's able to stay afloat. And I've seen a lot of his commentary on Israel Palestine. And so I'm always trying to, you know, is there a report or some evidence that I can glean from his reporting? Because that's what he brings to the table that's valuable, right? His opinions, not so much. Other color commentary, not so much. But if he's bringing, you know, and he's been known to break stories and things like that in the past. So he is one of many people whose work I have found useful in selective cases where I've interacted with it, right? I can't speak for his work overall. I'm sure we would disagree on a few things because I'm more of a libertarian philosophy, and I'm unclear on his philosophy of freedom. I'm a 21st century abolitionist. I recognize slavery in its multiple forms, and I studied and reverse engineered, like, how do they do that to us so we can liberate ourselves?
Well, you implied there, or maybe you didn't, that Jeremy Scahill was involved in, like, do you
He's the
know anything
remaining.
about?
Well,
Okay.
I know that his political bent is a little bit more
Yeah.
traditional media. Right now, I got a Scahill book over here because he wrote the book on Blackwater, I'm pretty sure, back in the
Yes.
day.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that was very useful information. But then you learn about like the right left political circus, right? So when I got into all this stuff, W. Bush was in the White House.
Yeah.
And the guy I sued for my whistleblowing, the guy who owned the company, which is now Dell, by the way, because it was called
Whoa.
it was called EMC, but EMC got bought by Dell. It's the biggest tech like merger in history. So the guy I was suing was a billionaire founder of EMC who was ambassador to Ireland for Bush, and he was Cheney's biggest fundraiser. But I didn't know any of that when I blew the whistle. I just knew they were ripping people off, like in like at a publicly traded company, infiltrate that company, do black book type stuff on their accounts, and be able to not get caught for it level, which could be very catastrophic to our whole economy. So I not only risked my career, I lost my career. I sacrificed my multi-million-dollar career to do what I knew was right. And regardless of the fact that that game is rigged, and I learned about it over 6 years, that was a
Oh,
good learning
yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
you know? So I was able to have a personal revolution and outgrow that status quo and learn a whole bunch of things. I mean, I probably spent, if we're in school for 15,000 hours, I probably put 15 or 20,000 hours into unschooling myself and learning what is the actual evidence of this reality as opposed to what they've told us about it. And I was able to ask questions and follow that through to my knowledge and answers and understanding. And that's what learning is really about. So they took that away from us to create the school system. They broke the education, and you could tell out there. Right. Remember 20 years ago, Rogan had that joke in his stand-up act on what was the DVD back then? I think we can go dumber about Bush, and you know how he was like at the grocery store line one day and someone called him sir, and he's like, holy shit, I'm an adult. Like nobody knows what's going on here. Like they groomed our society to be incompetent dads like Homer Simpson and the Family Guy. Like dad's a joke. He can't get anything done. He's a slob. He has no respect for himself. The mother is the one, and it just matches the Democrat agenda. So what they have is they've got politics embedded in our culture so much, and that's not what you need to worry about, red team, blue team. You just need to know about freedom and slavery, and then you see both these teams are probably trying to fuck you at the drive-through. Pardon my peshies.
How dare you?
Peshies.
No. So yeah, I'm into that. So, you know, I've been very blessed since I was a young man, I went on my own. I mean, we can get into psychology of that. I got cut very early from my basketball teams. I thought I was better than a lot of the guys on it. Probably wasn't, but at the time I thought that. So I always thought nobody gets me. So from the start in comedy, I basically created the Las Vegas comedy scene. There was one open mic every other week, and I just decided to make shows every night. And then I moved to LA and I instantly get rejected by the industry. And, I meet my girlfriend. We start figuring out ways to promote shows, put all these sponsors on it. And then, getting into the internet because I always wanted a radio show. And then I was too wild for radio. So podcasting come and I just jump right in it. And then COVID hit and I'm like, this is what I'm built for, dude. Like having no system around. I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing. So the reason I bring that up is because from a very young age, and I'm not saying I wasn't a problem student, but I was pounded by my teachers, and they're not bad people. But I spent like all fourth grade in detention. Like instead of going out for lunch and play, I was forced to sit in the hall by myself, and I did it forever. Like forever, I did it. And you start to get into like, okay, what is school about? Now, I love teachers. My parents were teachers. I think they're doing what they're taught and they're doing what they're told. But so much of our educational system is creating workers who get up, go, bang, here, bell, get up, go, bang, bang, new instructions. And then that's what they're built. And, we've said before on the show, but, if you're getting on the principals list, you're probably the person who follows the rules the best. And that's really what they're rewarding.
I got rewarded a lot for following rules, bro. I never had detention. I'd stay after school to do extra credit. So we'd see each other in the hallway and you and I would be friends.
Yeah.
But we were staying after school or going on a weekend for different reasons. I'm taking statistics and debate on Saturdays and like you're like writing on 100, but to your credit, I think that your position is more intelligent. That's a more intelligent reaction. And I excelled at school because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. I thought that was the path.
That.
I thought that was the path. Like, do good at this and you'll be successful in life. And I was probably halfway through college when I discovered that's a bunch of bullshit and it's not going to work out. What's my plan B? My plan B was I learned how to run a business by investing in a franchise. And so they gave me training. I ran a business. I made buku bucks that summer, hired all my friends, had incredible work outside all the day, and did that for a couple of years and then sold it to my brother. So like, it's what I did to pay for college that actually gave me a life after college that was other than 35 grand a year for like an engineering degree or whatever they were handing out back then. So I ended up getting business management too, which is a useless degree, but at least I got through that system.
Do you think business is a useless degree?
Business, because what I was taught at university does not map to the reality. I was running a successful do you remember the beginning of Boiler Room where Seth's running the casino and then like they're like, here's how like a business actually runs, and and then he finds himself at the Boiler Room. So the idea is I'm running a business during college and let's say we do $100,000 of production in the summer over 3 months, right? And then I come back to take classes about macroeconomics, microeconomics, logistics, a bunch of stuff that doesn't have anything to do with actually knocking on doors, communicating with people, finding out what their problem is, having a conversation to understand and making a better plan with them, because that's the art of ethical sales and that pays everybody's paycheck, but no one gets a degree in it. They don't operate at any of the schools. So it's like, that was like a skeleton key to success for me, learning and getting that experience under my belt, because that allowed me to be a whistleblower later. When all these other guys I'm working with, they know there's a backdoor in the software. They know they're making these companies vulnerable, but they're getting paid bucks and they don't know how else to go make their offer to the market. I was like, I know how to go get whatever job I want. I'm skating, because the easiest thing for me to do is stay true to my consciousness. The harder thing would have been to stay in that industry and continue to do that nonsense. Very much disagreed with me. So I was fine at leaving. Like American Express, like basically put a hitman out, not literally, but we got threatening calls. Cause when I got shut off at work for being a whistleblower, they shut everything off. It was like an early form of cancellation. So American Express calls she maybe was my fiance at the time, definitely my girlfriend, because they tried using charges on my American Express to like, did you know he was at Victoria's Secret? Did you know that he was spending money
Oh
here?
my God.
So I get home from work and because I had started a new job and she's like, Amex just called, had a really interesting conversation. And I was like, no way. And because she was with me at Victoria's Secret and she had spent money, like she was at dinner with like, so they thought I was cheating on her and they were trying to use stuff off my American Express statement. I was like, these guys are like gangsters. I thought maybe that was an isolated instance. After being a whistleblower, moving to Connecticut, one of my wife's friends was a local Congress critter, right? And they were prosecuting AIG in Connecticut. It was a big deal back in like 2006. And I told them, that used to be one of my clients. I've done a lot of research on them. I know they were founded by the CIA. They had the world's largest private air force at the time of 9/11. They're involved in narco trafficking. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, right? So I told them, that's a different kind of beast. Like you're from Connecticut, you've never left town. I just like, dude. So anyway, next time I saw him, he was stepping down from being a congressman. We were like, what happened? He's like, they called me from their offices and openly threatened me and my family. He's a lawyer too. They openly just told him, like, this is what's going to happen to you if you continue down this. Now, he had a partner here in Connecticut. That partner didn't get the same call. He's now a senator. So you know who the partner served without question. They know the chain of command. This other guy, like he's out there raking his garden right now. So
Which isn't so bad.
it's not because he's alive. He's got a healthy family. It's probably, but you just have to know, like we could have strength in numbers and oftentimes do in certain situations. Like that's how Ross Ulbricht got the pardon. Because, you start with some graphics and some songs and some events and some fundraisers. And over years, you build an audience to the point where the Libertarian Convention is like, everyone hold up a free Ross sign when Trump talks. And then they did it at the Bitcoin convention like a month later. And now he's going to be in New Hampshire in a couple of weeks with us at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So like these movements do take time. And there's always just a few people at the beginning. Like when I met Ross's mom, there wasn't a whole lot of people helping them out. But when you hear that story and how I know he was, I don't know because I haven't talked to him in person yet. From my perspective, he was framed by the intelligence agencies that I study every day, and they have done this to other people or worse. So yeah, like those things are more valuable for me to do than ever working for a corporation or doing any of their sales work because they hired me to do the things they can't do. Go sell $1 million software contract to this, multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. Okay. Go get a $10 million deal from GE for some AI software. All right, I could do that. Let me talk to the CTO. Boom. So I was able to do their things really well. But like, the reference Club of Baby Seal from Good Will Hunting? Yeah, dude, that's based on a real guy's story, by the way. There's a real Will Hunting. His name's not Will Hunting, but there's a real story back in the day. And that is something I identified with. I guess I had seen that movie, but I was like, I don't want to give my intellect to any of these international organizations whose goals are very antithetical to what I've discovered as personal.
It's kind of, they're literally gangsters in suits, dude. And the whole theory of like mobs and all that stuff, I think the mob had more integrity than corporations. They're kind of the new Terminators,
The Italian mob has been maligned because a lot of things that are credited to the Italian mafia in Hollywood cinema. Yeah. I mean, it's like the Italian mob, for better or for worse, had a lot of rules and ethos and morals, I don't, right. Like, so there was a culture of protecting their own against the other. Right.
And like, and this is Sam speaking, I don't know where you stand on, but there was a lot of power in the Jewish mafia. So the whole
Not so
thing
many
about
movies.
yeah,
Only
the whole
Once
thing
Upon a
about
Time in
Hollywood,
America.
yeah,
That's
was
the only, I think
paint
that's
them
one of
as
the
the
only.
Italians, not the Jews. The big thing I got from you, and it's something I've talked about on this show during your discussion, is like with school and all that stuff, is this thing that I've learned on the show is intelligence versus smarts. There are people on the street that if given an opportunity, they could run a billion-dollar industry based on their street experiences. There's a lot of people, like I would say, like, for me personally, like someone like a Joe Rogan could have both of them. They could be very intelligent and be smart. I think I'm more smart than I'm intelligent. I think probably you have both, which is a blessing. But just because you're intelligent doesn't mean you're smart. I say it all the time. I know wonderful people out here that are the most intelligent people I know that could write you the greatest script you've ever written, ever read, and they couldn't tell you how the world really works. You know, it
But
gets
they can
into
do the
that.
thing. They can crank the widget. I call them book smart. So like
Yeah.
when I moved to New York City 25 years ago, I don't live there anymore. I moved out. But when I moved there, I was more book smart. And then as a function of living there, I had to drop a lot of naivete, man. I come from Western Pennsylvania. I told my parents, you gave me an ideal upbringing. The downside is when you leave town and you deal with people in the world who aren't honest, I was at a disadvantage for a while. And
Yeah.
and because I cared enough to do something about it and not just ignore it, like I went on a different path because of that. And I sure do appreciate being raised around like salt of the earth people who were honest and had integrity and demonstrated for me how to be a strong man in this world who's responsible and self-reliant and like no excuses attitude. I can't tell you how much that matters. And I know most people are deprived of that upbringing or that opportunity. I mean, they grow up in rough areas with single parent homes at best a lot of times. So to equal the playing field, because it's like if we want to be victims, that says that what is the solution is outside our capacity. If I say George Soros is the guy who's doing everything, then I have to wait for Soros to fix everything. What if I say my ignorance of Soros and his ilk are, the connector? And what if I insulate that and cut that off and stop giving them satisfaction? Because I understand what they're trying to do. So I'm going to go this way, right? I'm going to be a little contrarian to their globalist regime where we don't have the ability to fight back anymore. And that's their brand of freedom. That's their brand of peace, where you don't have a Second Amendment or a First Amendment or a Fourth Amendment or anything, right? That's what they want. And that's what H.G. Wells wrote about in New World Order and New Machiavellis and the Open Conspiracy and the things to come. Like he's one of their prophets. Like he's giving us the business plan, but it's cloaked sometimes as science fiction. But, there's just so much evidence on the landscape that people could wake up in greater numbers so fast if, and it catches like fire, intellect does. So people getting smart, wising up, all these types of things, I think are all like, that's 2025 to 2030 right there. Because of that, they're going to try to pull the rug out. They're going to have another pandemic. They're going to have an economic upheaval. They're going to have a World War III. They're going to have UFOs and aliens, bro. Can you believe that's in the news? It is so like they're taking your podcast material, right? They're taking you and AJ.
I'm just talking about that today. TMZ's like,
Yeah.
we have footage of
Fifth
a
plane.
fifth plane. I'm
Yeah.
like, TMZ's in the conspiracies now.
Right. Right. You are so cutting edge that they are downstream from culture. You guys are not infecting culture, but you're
Pushing it.
You're providing a vaccination of information at a much needed time where otherwise people just believe what they see on mainstream media. And I know I did for years and I've studied it. I started studying, like I used to have like multiple TVs on recording to the DVD-Rs, right? Remember those back in the day? And I'd have some different inputs and I'd be like CNN, MSNBC, Fox. Oh, look at what they're saying. Holy shit. Like this is the two sides of the country just being played by 5 channels,
Yeah.
and then it's like, what's your alternative? Art Bell, George Norrie, Alex Jones, right? So like going back to the beginning, when I was coming from a corporate, very traditional landscape, and then I'm like, who are the people that blew up these buildings and killed my coworkers? And then I look into like, what's the official story? And then you ask a question, who wrote the official story of 9/11? Philip Zelikow. What was his degree in? Like he's trained in creating public myths, not investigating terrorism events. Like where do these people come from? Zelikow, he co-wrote a book with Condoleezza Rice about Germany unified expansion, something back in the day. So they're like part of the neoconservative cabal that had been infected in American government since the 1970s when Cheney and Wolfowitz and Rumsfeld, they all got into the Nixon administration. That whole Nixon administration is just the people who were benefiting from the Bushes and Harrimans funding the Nazis.
Yes, man. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Nobody sees that.
Yeah.
We have people I love that get a lot of stuff and they can't come to grips with that the U.S., the Western bankers, the Aryan bankers funded the Nazis. They can't come to grips with it. And that the Nazis were the Bolshevik version of Germany.
Not only that, but the Bolsheviks were funded by American International Corporation, which was many of the same people from Federal Reserve. And that's like page 1 of an Anthony Sutton book right there. So when people start to realize like Kennedy was killed, who were the people who presided over it? Well, there's MI6, at that time, Mossad and CIA. And what did they all participate in? Redrawing the maps and creating new narratives after World War II.
Yep.
And once you do the narrative for World War II, they've got America like, hey, if you say anything against us, we're going to tell everybody about the narratives that you know, there's some narratives cooking there. And I know because I have a book called Psych War, Sykewar by Daniel Lerner. And he documents that the first Western troops into a lot of places in Germany were psychological warfare. And when you get into the WHO, it's William Paley, who later is CBS. Charles Douglas Jackson, C.D. Jackson of Time Life, owning the Zapruder film later, right? And Nelson Rockefeller. So when Nelson Rockefeller is working in PSYOPs during World War II, and then just a couple years later, I have the book here. Just a couple years later, do you know the story of how Nelson Rockefeller was blackmailed for his UN votes to create Israel as a
No,
state?
let me hear this.
All right. So to set this up, well, that's the wrong button. Play this. All right, here we go. This is a book called The Witness Tree. It is written by John Loftus, who is a Department of Justice attorney whose work illustrated how Nazis were brought to America by the British and Americans. He wrote a book. So Loftus is a legit researcher with U.S. Justice Department clearance, cosmic NATO clearance to see all the documents, cosmic level security clearance to go in the 24 acres of Suitlands, Maryland, and the underground vaults, all the stuff. He says it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. So he gets this research, but he doesn't know, like, how am I going to tell people about this important story? So he gets a Canadian who's a novelist named Brendan Howley. And they write this book, and in the first part of the book, it talks about how the Dulles brothers killed Eleanor Dulles' boyfriend because he was Jewish, and this is a WASP establishment, and you can't be doing that in this family. So that's interesting evidence as well. And then there's a story here at the end about Nelson Rockefeller, but more interesting are the end notes. So if I go to the afterword here, postscript, these are all the facts, and I can zoom in. These are the facts from which the stories were made, right? And on this one, it says this story came to us from the guy who, the Nelson Rockefeller story came from the guy who founded Mossad, okay? His name's Reuven, R-E-U-V-E-N, Shaloah, S-H-I-L-O-A-H. So Reuven Shaloah contacts John Loftus, and he tells him this story. Now, here's the story, because I don't want to... This book is impossible to get in America.
I know. I'm looking for it right now. I can't get it.
Candace Owens covered it a couple weeks ago, which made it way harder for people to get it. But I was glad that, like, that story's getting out there. So here's the story. It's like, is it November 22nd, 1947? Yes. Okay. So the date that Kennedy's killed, but a couple years before he's killed. So November 22nd, 1947, these two, so before Israel's founded, they had the Irgun, Haganah, and Stern Gang. Those were the militant forces that, like, participated in the King David hotel bombing, for instance. So you got two Haganah, like Mossad doesn't exist yet, so it's Haganah agents. Two Haganah agents go to Rockefeller Center. Now, when they go to Rockefeller Center, Nelson Rockefeller's offices are there, Universal Studios, whatever the other things they have there. They have all those stages and places where they film stuff, right? But also British security coordination. MI6's double-cross system installation for America is located at that time in Rockefeller Center. So now these two Haganah agents, they go upstairs in the elevator and they walk down the hall to Nelson Rockefeller's office, and they have an appointment, and he sees them in, and the one guy sits down and the other guy throws his dossier on Rockefeller's desk, and he sits down. So they say, look, this dossier contains certain information that you wouldn't want the public to be aware of, and it involves the Rockefeller family funding the Nazis. By this time, I'm not sure, but this is an adjacent, similar tangent. Richard Nixon, who was a lawyer for the Navy, discovered the Rockefeller family's funding of the Nazis, and he went to Allen Dulles and said, I'm going to, prosecute your boss or whatever. And then Allen Dulles was basically like, let me fund your campaign for vice president. And then he became vice president under Eisenhower, who was part of the same right under the psychological warfare group that Eisenhower ran with C.D. Jackson and Paley. So he becomes part of that infrastructure, and then they burn him in the 70s. right? So let's go back.
Oh shit.
These two guys sit down, they throw the dossier there. Rockefeller he's got a scotch. He opens like these details because I was like, where'd you get the details? But since the source is the guy in the meeting who founded the Mossad, then I have to reread it and take the details seriously. The way he says it, Rockefeller opens the dossier, he starts looking through it, he closes it, and he walks over to the window, right? He gets up, he walks over, he goes, yeah, it's not his first time being blackmailed. So he goes, you tell Ben Gurion he can either have his blood or his country. And here's what I mean by that. Nobody's going to see this document ever. No one's ever going to see this ever. And none of the real bankers from World War II are ever going to be prosecuted. If you want my Latin American votes, I think he had sway over 26 votes for this UN vote that made Israel and recognized Israel as a country. This is like a couple days before that. So he says, you can have the votes, but here's my terms and conditions. And he gives Ben Gurion an ultimatum. So the two guys go into like an office and they call Ben Gurion and they come back and they've got a deal. And now a couple days later, they have the UN vote and all these Central American countries are all of a sudden all like, want to remove the indigenous people from Palestine along with the Eastern Europeans who moved there. So it's a really interesting story. It's much more highly detailed than that. But the fact that the source is the founder of the Mossad and he went to Boston to meet with John Loftus to be like, look, here's something that people should probably know about. Now, what are his intentions of telling Loftus that in the first place? I mean, it matches up. It corresponds to a whole bunch of other pieces of evidence that already exist independent of his story. He's not making out that Rockefeller, funded the Nazis, benefited from the Nazis. Like they funded the industrialization before the Nazis could even take power. The Harrimans and the Bush family were involved. This is Prescott Bush back in the days of Brown Brothers Harriman, but they were part of the original American International Corporation that was like the robber barons going around reshaping the world in their image. The robber barons got done building railroads in America and Europe, and then they said, let's go build them in China and Russia. That infrastructure became the communism of 60 million people dead under Stalin, 50 million or whatever you want to say under Mao. And Mao is David Rockefeller's most proud project. And Brzezinski ran Pol Pot, and these industrialists, robber baron tycoons are flying into Soviet Russia, meeting with Stalin the whole time. That's where the Koch brothers' dad got their money. So like there's a whole
crazy, dude. People have no clue.
So there's people that funded the Nazis and they're being blackmailed over it. That turns into when they kill Kennedy and other people were involved, they can now drop a dime on anyone in our government and be like, look, we'll show people how you participate in killing of your own king. I'm sorry, that's a ritual. Sorry, that's a ritual thing. Anyway, then the people who knew about that, by the time Nixon comes around, that's what Watergate's all about. There was no, not Mary Baker Eddy. She's different. Cord Meyer, Mary Meyer, kept a diary of all this stuff that her husband was involved with because he was with X2. He's with the Anglo-Americans. She had this diary. Then she lived in Georgetown. They're all called the Georgetown set because they all kind of lived in the same area. Quigley's part of this too. So Mary Meyer, Cord Meyer is an operative. This is his wife. She gets JFK high on LSD. She's talking to Angleton and she's like, yeah, I got a diary. And next thing you know, she's brutally tortured and murdered and left for dead and all these sort of things. That diary disappeared in the CIA, the Oracle at CIA, Angleton, he wanted that dossier back or that diary back. Allegedly, that's what they were trying to steal from the safe in the Watergate. That makes a lot more sense than this other, it's democratic break-in or whatever the thing they tell people. There was someone who had a diary outing a lot of these people and their activities, and they all go back to the Anglo-American Nazi funding people that were still, it's a multi-generational cult. We're not in it. We're just seeing like the latest iteration of it.
Yeah. So there's a couple interesting things. So have you there was a time where 60 Minutes, I believe, did pretty good work. Like early on, we'll say 70s, 80s. And then obviously Clinton deregulates the media and everything goes to shit.
Yeah, because they start doing news for profit. Right.
Right. So there's a story, and I can't find it, but it's a really great 60-minute story about this Boston lawyer who I don't know what.
That's John Loftus.
Oh, really? So he's the one
CBS, as he says it, I can play the clip for you, or I can send you guys a clip from my interview with him. He says 60 Minutes got the Emmy Award and my family got the death threats.
Unbelievable. So he tells a story about how Nixon, Rockefeller, and there's I think it was Eisenhower. I don't or Truman. I can't remember. I think it was Eisenhower.
Truman rode out against the Rockefellers, and that's why they took, because he was a guy he's a haberdasher. He sells suits in Missouri. His sister was in charge of the Eastern Star Masonic organization, and that's how they get the guy who had to add the S to his name to drop nukes for him. Did I get that wrong?
So so he does a story about how he was pressing the CIA, wanted to look at documents. He pressed so hard they got 1 day to look at these documents. Isn't that crazy? It's like good luck finding this shit. So he presses them. They go, "You got 1 day, look at this. You can't take notes. You can just read it." Yeah, I think that's it, dude.
That could be.
Dude, can you
Americans
send
lost
me a
their
link to
lives
that?
fighting
I've
the
been
Nazis
looking
in
for
World War
that
II.
forever.
And yet, hundreds of those Nazis and their collaborators
Yes,
eventually
that's
wound
it.
up
Yeah,
living
that's it, dude.
comfortably here in the United States.
Can you send me a link to
becoming
that? I
youth
want
force.
that so
Send me
badly.
the
I tried
link.
to
Nobody in
find
the
Drop
it.
State
it in-
Department
you
at a
drop it in
higher
the
level
chat?
who knew
I'll
what was
trade you
going
links.
on and okayed it. Did Frank Wisner have no boss?
There were three men who principally were Eisenhower's representative for Cold War affairs during the early 50s. C.D. Jackson,
Yep.
Undersecretary of H.E.W. Nelson Rockefeller, and
Yep.
Vice President Richard Nixon.
Bang, dude.
Would they have
Good
known
recall.
that former Nazi war criminals were being employed by U.S. military intelligence and were being invited into the country, given U.S. citizenship, despite what they had done?
I read some classified information that indicated that a number of these programs were approved at the highest levels.
Whether Richard Nixon, the late Nelson Rockefeller, and the late C.D. Jackson, former publisher of Time Life, whether they knew is still an open question.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if they didn't
Sure
know,
it is.
then they too
Hey,
were
you know
being
how
lied
Nelson
to,
died?
as was the case with the Congress.
Nelson
No.
dived. He died in a Michael Douglas type of style of muff diving into his secretary's crotch. I'm pretty sure that's the official story of how he died at like age 56 or something. David lived to 100. He didn't do enough muff diving apparently.
Well, that's super interesting. And then, you brought up Watergate. Have you ever heard the theory that Watergate was really about an escort service, and that the story of all the, not that they didn't do a break-in just to get shit.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, thank you for finding that, dude. Thank you. That they did not that they didn't break in, but the real information all came from just a bunch of politicians banging escorts and having pillow talk.
Well, there's a long history to it because if you read, for instance, Whitney Webb's One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1, she starts her timeline in like 1941 when our intelligence starts dealing with the mafia cartels who are smuggling heroin. So it starts here in 1941, but really it starts in UK in 1938 when MI6 started working with Meyer Lansky organization, and then they brought that to us. So then once she starts building out the history, one of the things I found interesting was the Plaza Hotel, which I have been to and eaten in the restaurant and all that good stuff. Plaza
In LA,
Hotel-
in Vegas,
No,
excuse
no,
me.
in New York City,
Okay.
right on Central Park. Trump owns it now. So that hotel historically was like a very classy place, and you could meet someone there for lunch and all this good stuff. Plaza Hotel was running these Blue Suite parties. Now, the Blue Suite parties were special rooms that were rigged up with recording equipment to blackmail people. And this went on
Unbelievable.
like starting with J. Edgar Hoover all the way up, through the years. Trump's mentor, Roy Cohn, was running the Blue Suite. Like he inherited running the Blue Suite parties. And then he obviously mentored Trump. Like there's this whole blackmail currency network out there. Don't get caught up in it. Otherwise, he probably would have got caught up in it at some point. So having a mentor who know those. So my point is, before Epstein, before Diddy, that type of stuff was going on. Was it likely going on at the Watergate? Yeah, probably. Because if you follow that up to like just the 80s, H.W. Bush had late night call boys taking tour of the White House bedrooms and stuff. And the kids drew out. It's a Washington Times front page article. It shows the credit card receipt that they paid for the prostitutes on. And the title is Call Boys Take Late Night Tour of White House, like June 29th, 1989 ish. Right. But again, they deep six those inconvenient articles. So when W. Bush gets caught with Jeff Gannon or Mark, what was the kid?
What happened
They
to
tried to
John?
well, they tried to say he was Johnny Gosh, but there was like the male prostitute in his press corps who had gay porn services as
Yeah,
his
yeah,
side thing,
yeah.
right? So I think that guy's name was Jeff Gannon, and then people were like, "Who is that guy? Where'd he come from?" And then there were some people saying it was Johnny Gosh, the original milk carton boy
Yes.
that had been taken a long time ago, right? That gets you all into like Franklin cover up, whether it's the original or Franklin National Scandal, Nick's book, Nick Bryant. There's a lot of coverage on Boys Town, that whole Discovery documentary about Conspiracy of Silence that they deep six that too. I'm sorry, I should say 86th because that's how Comey says it. They 86th that
Yeah, yeah.
documentary.
So this is a big part of why I push back on the deep conservative rights and their demonization of adults doing adult stuff with together. Now, if you're a Christian and that's against what you believe, I understand it.
And you don't
Okay.
have to do it.
And
But
again,
also,
you
my
don't
freedom ends where your freedom begins. So, like, philosophy wise, in order to say, like, if I say you have to do what I say, you're my slave. And if I say you can't do that and it's just you and there's no victim, no crime, then I'm trying to assert my freedom onto you, which makes you my slave. So I try to be like, look, one of my mentors is Ernie Hancock. And the way he says it is, there are those who want to be left alone and those who won't leave them alone. Right. And so his show is for like us trying to stay insulated from they, them, those who would like to take away our freedom. They exist. They have always existed. How can we empower ourselves to live a lifestyle of liberty and freedom during our lifetime? We only have one life. I can't wait for the New World Order to go past its expiration date and then live carefree. I need to learn how to be happy and productive despite all this noise and just focus on the signal.
I'm so with you on that. And it's just like, it's just culture wars. And whenever the society kind of swings one way moderate, one way, the other way moderate, the other side comes out. Like if we start to go, hey man, I feel like there's this kind of cultural movement to a little bit more conservative. And even though I'm not a conservative, I have some conservative beliefs. I'm pretty much a live and let.
What was the Bill Maher joke back in the day? Like, I'm conservative when it comes to money and I'm liberal when it comes to prostitutes.
Yeah. Basically, it's like whatever adults want to do with other adults. I'm not, because I have so many problems in my own life that I can't waste my time regulating other people. And everybody wants deregulation until it comes to things that you don't like. It's the same thing with Marxism. Everyone hates Marxism until the Marxists are going after people you don't like. And then you seem to just, not you, but they seem to just deep throat it and they love it. And they have zero problems with all these government overreaches for people they don't like. And they throw out all their personal beliefs so to go after the people they don't like the vaccine, and it's just like, okay, I'm my body, my choice until it comes to this. And then you got to, and I had friends of mine who were like, during that whole time period, were like, it's my body, my choice. I go, well, what about the vaccine? And she goes, well, I see that as different. I go, of course you do. Because it doesn't fit into your sensibilities. So you're willing to compromise on your principles to give the government overreaching like powers. And I'm like, no, dude. No. The government doesn't tell you what to do. I'm anti-abortion for a lot of reasons. And one of them is I think children are a blessing. Okay. Children are a blessing. But again, are we going to tell people what they can and cannot do? And I'm going to get a lot of shit on the internet for that. And I'm sorry about that. I don't like abortion because I know when you bring children into this world and they don't have two parents to care for them, that's a hard life. If you look at all of our prisons, look at all of our homeless people, those people are the results of just the government raising kids where they're not raised with any love and any guidance. And I had a guy when I was early in LA that slept on my couch for a year and a half. He was a foster kid. He had no direction. He had nobody telling him. He had no drive. He had no instincts. He had nothing telling him this is what you should do. I would go to work. I'd work all day after doing stand-up at night. And I would come home at like noon or whatever it was. and he was watching Comedy Central during the day. And that was when Comedy Central was putting on the worst movies possible. So I'm not into it. Again, I'm against it. I think children are a blessing. If you bring a kid into life, you got to figure it out. That's my humble opinion. So, but man, it's real quick when people start to change their opinions on everything.
True, dude. For sure.
It's a tough fucking discussion. And we don't like bringing it up here, but I just see people just compromise their principles on stuff all the time.
I think, first off, if you were raised around people with poor principles and you're emulating those, know that that's something you can choose to outgrow. And you can learn to intentionally outgrow. You can learn to change the people that you hang out with. Because a lot of times our principles and integrity are a function of the people we surround ourselves with. And if we surround ourselves with more strong, self-reliant, excuse-free people, we as a result are going to have less excuses to offer to other people. And therefore, we're going to have more progress and success because we're engaging with things that are difficult to do. I had one of my students the other night say, as a man, like this is his like beginning point, that he was sticking to things he's good at, and therefore he would shy away from opportunities at anything that isn't, he's not good at. And I thought, yeah, I remember being at that phase, and it's right before everything takes off, because once you start to embrace the things you're not good at and become good at them, now I can pick up a skill in a couple hours and do a thing that I thought I couldn't do a couple hours ago. But I watched a YouTube video, I learned the words, I understood how it works, and then I went and tried it, got it wrong the first time, tried again, got it right the second time, and now I do that thing. Right? Whether it's like learning how to do some of your own plumbing, like what are the situations, or managing your own health. What are the situations in life where you have to call an expert and learn how to like close the gap on that expertise? Because you really don't need an expert. You just need someone with some competence and familiarity. And we can go through a learning curve. And like, they used to say it takes, like 10,000 hours to become an expert. But really, you could pick up almost any new skill, from playing guitar to driving a forklift or a big loader or a crane, like in 20 hours of study, right? It's going from knowing nothing to knowing something, then closing the gaps on the understanding until you can do the thing. And once you know that you can do that, then you can say, it's a little overwhelming. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. So now you got to prioritize your time. And what do you actually want to get done with the week, right?
Yeah.
Giving that to someone who's sleeping on your couch and helping them get off their feet is a very powerful element, juxtaposed to what, Comedy Central was filling them with, and I think that probably your action and your dogged tenacity and no excuses attitude had a positive influence, unless he's still sleeping on your couch all these years later.
No, I wish I knew where he was. I hope he's still alive. I want to get into
But
something.
do you blame, wait, a quick second. Do you blame schooling, obviously, for that, for not being able to do nothing?
I believe government taking schooling away from parents and states probably has something to do with it, like a federal government, because they did have a whole process where they wanted to not empower students with the power to think, because then you would compete with their status quo ideas. So it's not the teachers, and it's not even the local districts. They don't have any they don't have any autonomy. They're just doing what they're told. They're in a system that all trickles down like orders and just regurgitate this on the test, and that's called learning. It's really not. So I would say that everyone has personal responsibility, and maybe we should have all been smarter about the system, but we're here now and we can get smart. And we're not going to get smart if we act as victims of a system that we don't have any influence over. We're acting smart when we say that happened and I can have post-traumatic growth instead of a stress disorder for the rest of my life. And that growth, I think, is the healthy mental acuity to be able to make a goal and achieve that goal by a method. Because here's what the 1938 Yale frustration and aggression studies said. If a candidate is blocked from achieving their goal, they will become frustrated. And if anyone becomes frustrated, at some point, they will become aggressive. And I took that to, like, how did they apply that to our society? They learned that. What did they apply it to? Well, if you get frustrated, here's a pill. If you get aggressive, here's a industrial prison complex where we'll make money from you one way or the other, right? So now, if you don't give people the ability to reach goals, they're either going to end up drugged up or locked up. But what if we give them the learning algorithm so they can learn anything, conquer problems and challenges that are in their way, make goals, achieve them, and bring their offer to the market and live a better life? That subverts the entirety of 100 years of they, them, those who have been trying to undermine us and hold us back. They don't understand freedom, which is why they're threatened by it. But because they don't understand freedom, they can't they can't ever extinguish it. We are always steps ahead of them, and they are trying to catch up with surveillance and all these other things. And they have a goal. They want total domination with robots, algorithms, and drones to block off their human Elysium layer before we can get freedom to the masses. So we're in a race right now. I thought people would take Terminator as like a warning, and instead they took it as a business plan. They actually made Skynet, and they're robotifying it right now with autonomous robots, right?
Yeah.
So we have to learn to see things for what they are. We're in a intellectual arms race. If we don't intellectually arm ourselves and practice intellectual self-defense, which is why I teach all this stuff, the robots, the AI and the drones are going to rule over our families, our future, our next generations. And there, it's like, picture the jackboot stomping on the face, like Orwell said, man. So we have to learn from history before it repeats. I also did 24 episodes of a series by that same name. So it's just a humble plug.
Yeah, dude, you're crushing it. You're totally right. But here's my whole thing, and I want to get into some stuff with you, is that there's this whole notion on the internet that the right is fully accepting this Palantir shit, and they're just like, oh, it's gonna be used for good. And I've
not.
seen one tweet with that one guy, and I think he kind of got curb stomped in his his comment section. Most of the people I see, and granted Twitter only shows me certain people, but they seem to be pushing back against this. I 100% believe that the Israeli-Palestine situation and this Palantir stuff is going to cost Trump a lot of his base. Maybe he doesn't care because he got in and now he's got 4 years and he's paying off his slave masters. That's fine, but I do think people are waking up to it, and I do believe that the conscious whole energy of humanity is a lot stronger than this small group of lizard people, and they've been able to work in the dark against us. But now we see what they're doing. Maybe I'm just full of hope and have a white pill. I'm trying to save myself, and by my action, showing other people they could save themselves. Do you think Trump could lose his base?
Yeah, he could definitely lose his base because he's married into an agenda he doesn't really understand. Right, his grandchildren have a right to return. He's made certain positions known and catered to Bibi Netanyahu for a long time. The technocracy of Palantir and the apartheid of the Palestinians they're tied together, man. They test new technology on the Palestinians because they're prisoners. It's a prison. It's a panopticon. They're under total surveillance all the time. They have cutting edge sensors, all this stuff. So when you know that, and then you see October 7th, it's like, oh, that's their 9/11, which means, you know, it's not what they offer it to the public to be. It has a purpose. They used it for that purpose to get away with, I will say, ethnic cleansing, because I can prove that 100% all day, every day, because people want to argue over the definition of genocide, but it's very clear. And it was created, ironically, as a function of what was done to Eastern Europeans. So,
Armenians.
Well, the Holodomor, I mean, that just means death by starvation. That was that was part Stalin and part Western countries turning their head and coughing conveniently to, so there's a lot. There's the Ukrainian Holodomor, there's the Armenian genocide, there's all these types of things that we're not taught in school. What we're taught about the Civil War isn't really like the situation, because if they taught Civil War legit in school, I have a presentation called The Underground History of America. They would teach you, dude, they would teach you that there's an international banking gangster crew that's working with the Confederates and the British to subvert this country, and that they took away the banking and made Lincoln print his own greenbacks, and then they whacked him. And then I have their letters calling him a thief, right? So it's like, even though the official story is the Rothschilds supported Lincoln, there is no history or artifacts to that, quite the opposite. And then they had their guy, the Rothschild International Banking Dynasty, had their guy, August Belmont, run the Democratic Party at that time. So they were in charge of the Democrats, which was the party of slavery. So I'm not saying that the Republicans are good, although Republicans were founded as the abolitionist party. So, I tend toward the abolitionists rather than the slavers, but other red team, blue team things I leave to, people who believe things without needing evidence.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's a real argument out there that even the Revolutionary War was funded by the Bank of England to get the new territories away from the monarchy.
It
and
was
to take
shortly
it
after the founding of the Illuminati on May 1st, 1776.
unbelievable.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting history on that. One of my favorite books is called Fire in the Minds of Men: Origins of the Revolutionary Faith by Rhodes scholar James H. Billington. He was the Librarian of Congress. It's the history of secret societies, Mithraism back in the day, all the way up through the Illuminati. He's got all the notes in the history. It's a very
What's it
authoritative
called?
book. Fire in the Minds of Men: Origins of the Revolutionary Faith by James H. Billington, Librarian of Congress and Rhodes Scholar. So he's part of the Anglo-American establishment that wants to bring America into the empire to take over the world. That's a conspiracy that people should dig into. The co-conspirator, William T. Stead, died on the Titanic, interestingly enough, and he has a memorial in Central Park for some reason, even though he's British.
My whole opinion is that the British Empire still controls Israel. They definitely control Saudi Arabia. They
Well,
control
let's call it
the
a merger of interests, right? Because the Rothschilds had the money, but the British Empire had the ships and the military. They need money to run the military, and the people with the money need people using violent force to enforce an agenda. And so you might see the Balfour Declaration as like a receipt for a transaction. Britain gets America into World War I, and then the Zionists get Palestine, and it's addressed to Lord Rothschild. But yeah, I mean,
still think the British Empire controls Israel, and it's all about controlling trade routes, and they control Saudi Arabia. Jay Dyer was on, and he was talking about how the first Saudi Arabian king was a British spy. So if you control Saudi Arabia, you control Mecca, and you control the Greater Israel Project, which is an interesting thing because I don't think there's enough Israelis to control all that, which is definitely the United States is going to be the manpower to control all these routes.
for sure.
And it's all about trade routes.
It's like we're the property managers for the British Empire. Here's the authoritative book. St. John Philby, or St. John Philby is how Americans say it, but his name's St. John Philby. He was an MI6 agent who went to the Arabian Peninsula, Arabized himself in his stylings, took an Arab wife, got close to Ibn Saud, made him the tribal leader and a king eventually. And so this is MI6 setting that up right before they created the Muslim Brotherhood. So Jay's right. And Loftus also writes about this because I'm thinking back, like, where did I learn about Philby? It was either from Dave Emery or John Loftus back in the day. So I like to point people to where I learned the stuff so you can learn it for yourself and have that ride instead of being like, I know everything. I'm just telling you where all these artifacts are, that they exist, that they're substantial, and here's how they fit in.
How do you think the Palestinian-Israeli skirmish ends? I feel that I don't know how Israel comes back from this. Some people think time. People will move on and forget. I mean, we do have a cycle.
They said never forget.
Yeah. I mean, dude, quote unquote, two Israelis ambassadors get assassinated. Nobody's talking about it. I just think that PSYOP died so quickly. But do you think Israel can recover from this? I personally don't believe that. But what are your thoughts?
The only way they can recover is if the internet gets shut off. Because once you wake up and you red pill and you see what's going on, you're not going back because it's a more detailed, nuanced, realistic perspective than the shadows on the wall in the cave of Plato that you're stuck in. But if I come in there and try to free you of your chains, it's not my right to do that. You'll try to kill me, and that's your right to defend yourself. But if I show you pictures on the wall that are more believable than what they're showing you, you'll come outside the cave to see where those pictures are coming from. Say, I've been watching Piers Morgan. I should go watch Grand Theft World. Yeah. You should go upstream from the culture and see all the cool stuff that goes on. Because Piers, he doesn't have the access level to show the type of history that we juxtapose on a weekly basis. So, like, there's people who have bigger audiences, and then there's people who actually make news. The people that inspire the wider audience people, you got like Whitney Webb and James Corbett and Jason Burmis and a whole bunch of people that we know and have worked with for a long time. Union of the unwanted host and guests for sure. So I'm comfortable continuing to believe that Palestinians can eventually have some justice, but I'm also realistic insofar as unless we get people to wake up with stronger doses of reality, like I have a presentation called The Underground History of Israel-Palestine Conflict. You can find it on Rumble. It's on my Grand Theft World page. And if more people saw that, there'd be less arguments, right? The Douglas Murrays of the world wouldn't have to say, you've never been there. It's like, no, dude, I read the books from the people who are there, who are Jewish, who are saying, like, here's what's going on. There's apartheid, there's concentration camps, there's technocracy, all this sort of stuff. And, you know, I'm not an apologetic for Hamas. I don't like, first off, they did damage to the Palestinian effort by taking civilians along with the military people, right? In their surprise attack where they broke out of prison that day. So, there could be Trump hotels there because Jared Kushner has been talking about developing that land since November after 10/7. I played the clips on the show. I'm like, look, they are like, here's the rubble, and they are like, here's our skyscrapers on the Riviera beach, and there's like trillions of dollars of natural gas and oil right off the coast that the Palestinians have never had freedom to go to. And let me say this: if you want a starting point, you can't go back to 3,000 years ago in the Bible, because you're not allowed to do DNA testing in Israel, because they're not related back to the Semites, who might be the
Of
people actually
course.
getting oppressed. The Palestinians have more Semitic blood than the people from Eastern Europe who
Yep.
moved there, right? Also, when we're
Ashkenazis.
talking Gaza, Gaza was part of Egypt. January, February, March, April, May of 1967, until the 6 Days War in June, when Israel went in and said, you guys now are part of our country and you're going to be prisoners for the next 80 years, 70 years, 60 years. How old am I?
A
now?
lot of years. A lot of years.
A lot of years. And then they had, like, they're always saying you're repeating Hamas talking points. Like,
So
when did
stupid.
Hamas get like a press service or like, it's such a, because I was listening to Dave Smith and Piers Morgan with the Israeli lawyer last night, and I was like, man, they have such stale responses and they can't respond to the current media environment. And when Dave is like, boom, 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 they can only say, you know, hate speech, anti-Semitism, but they never call anybody a liar. I think that's a Bilzerian quote. You know, they'll call you names, but they won't call you a liar, because there's a lot more where that came from.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that they're in deep shit. And biblically, they talk about the EU. Well, I don't know if it's biblically, but I've been told by people who
Tower
are
of Babel. Yeah.
that are very Christian that the prophecy is that the EU is going to go in, and it looks like more and more that's happening because the U.S. is on the wrong side of this. And you know, I'm done kind of arguing it with people. I have people I love that are just regurgitating October 8th talking points, like they've turned off any of the data spewing out about what's going on. They refuse to look any deeper into it. What happened on October 7th? What
Why
led
didn't
up
Israel
to
attack Qatar? The next day, all the Hamas leaders were in Qatar in their billion-dollar palaces and apartments or condos or whatever you want to call them, right? Right outside of Doha and the Anglo-American establishment military base in Qatar, right? And Qatar is used as a front to fund American universities at a higher rate than APAC, right? So there's a whole bunch of cover that they've used Qatar for over the years. And yeah, I think
You want to
people
break
just,
it? You want to break ChatGPT? By the way, just ask it. I tried this the other day. I said, "How if that attack on October 8th or October 7th was planned for months? How did they know that the festival was going to be there when it was only moved 2 days
that's right.
before the attack?" And
That's right.
ChatGPT's like, "Oh, blah, blah, oh, oh."
I
I
love
mean, it
when you
really,
do
it really jokes
ChatGPT.
on
I
that one, dude.
love it, dude. I love
Right.
when you stump that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Not
I did
today,
get it.
bitch.
I did get ChatGPT. It was one of the first things I asked it. I said, could you give me, I'm looking for authoritative sources that have documented the number of Palestinian prisoners prior to 10/7, right? So the claim after 10/7 is they killed 1,300 people and they took a bunch of hostages. What if you already had 12,000 hostages from the other side? Shouldn't that be weighed in? What if it's 28,000 hostages from the other side? People being held without trial by jury. They're just being held because they think they're terrorists. So like if you weigh it equally on the scale, I think more people would come to a logical conclusion. But when you only see these people are terrorists, they've been branded, there can only be one bad guy in the story. Other side must be the good guys. Otherwise, you're with the bad guys, right? And they did this to us during 9/11. And you remember how many pro Al Qaeda rallies there were all over this. No, there weren't. So there's something different this time going on. And I think there's a lot of people out there that speak out, like Jimmy Dore's really good at calling it out. Keaton over at Due Dissidence, those guys, they will cover these topics in a genuine, authentic way. I was just watching Max Blumenthal's documentary, basically taking all the 10/7 claims and disproving them. And that documentary is called Atrocity Inc., How Israel Sells Its Destruction of Gaza. So that's like a cool thing by the Gray Zone, Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal. So I try to. I don't want to be white pill first. I want to see the reality, come up with a better idea, and then be optimistic because of having done that work. So when I'm white pilled, optimistic about things, I have some substance in a chain of like, because of this, and this, I can see this type of vision, as opposed to just saying, everything's fine and everything's on fire around, the meme. I don't want to be that meme. So I think ahead. I try to consistently do that work that we're meant to do. We have quantum computers between our ears. We spend more every year on Starbucks lattes and stuff like that than we do on training our brain to serve us so we can be smarter in this world and have more freedom.
All right.
I try to balance that out.
I love it. Yeah. I really do. I fucking love it. I love it. This has been a great conversation, dude. We got to get you back more. I've had a great time talking to you. Always a pleasure. One more time, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me at grandtheftworld.com, and you can also find out about my training course. It's a course of breakthrough actions to help individuals adult up and get the rites of passage in society. It's called getautonomy.info. And Sam, is your club still open in Jersey?
Yeah,
Comedy Dojo.
Yeah, the Dojo of Comedy. The Dojo
all right,
of
good.
Comedy.
All right, Dojo of Comedy. I thought it was called the Comedy.
Why,
Dojo.
you gonna get on stage, dude?
No. But I got your T-shirt, and I was thinking like twice a year we drive past there, and I should find out and come by. But I would. Do you have karaoke there? I only get on stage for karaoke these days.
They should have karaoke. Maybe I should tell them that. Put it downstairs. Have some karaoke.
Drive people to the other room.
Navidad.
That's what I'll do. Yeah, I'll drive them to the where you're being funny. But
thank you.
You're going to be in Connecticut soon.
Yeah, right? Come by. There's always conspiracy theories there. You can meet Mark the Booker, the Nephilim.
I know Mark. He's so
he's going to be there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And do you ever go to any freedom festivals?
I'm going to Bohemian Grove. I would love to go to the Porch Fest one time. I think when my kids get just a tiny bit older, I'll go out there and check it out. But I do love going to those. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you find the others there. We're going up to New Hampshire for the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which people call Pork Fest, but there's no roasted pigs there. And it's like a family environment. We're outside camping for a week. I run a cafe and we feed all the VIPs and people come by and stuff. So we have like, it's in a campground. So what I'm saying is I have motels, rooms. And if you needed tickets ever in the future, when, things are the right time, I'd be happy to introduce you to the others at the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Let's go, bro. Let's go. Did you give your website already?
Yeah. Getautonomy.info and grandtheftworld.com.
Did you email us all those links so I can make sure they're in the...
They're on my link tree that I gave you guys with the bio.
Perfect.
But also, can you put that Vimeo link I gave you guys in the chat? Because I want them to see, like you gave them the 60 minutes, right? From John Loftus. I want them to see, like I did a 2-day interview with him. So that's a 10-minute sample, and he gives you his background and what he found. It's very powerful. And
is he still with us, or have we lost?
Yes. Yeah. I'm working with Chris Milligan at Trine Day. They have an authors project on World War II. It's really interesting stuff, and he's involved with that.
If you ever can connect me with him, I'd love to interview.
Oh, you want to interview him? Oh,
yeah. I found that video. I sent it to Jimmy Dore. He's like, holy shit. I would love to interview him.
Have Mark send me your number, and I'll give you his contact.
All right, dude. This has been great, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys, man.
I think you're up for Mount Crushmore, dog. That was a fucking phenomenal episode. So I'm gonna throw your hat into Mount Crushmore. The people vote, but you did fucking great. So
I appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you guys because it's always fun and it's low pressure. I can talk about conspiracies because I've done it for 20 years.
Yeah, you're the best. Thanks for coming on. All right, let's break down the episode.
Thank you guys.
Hey guys. So what do you guys think? Richard Grove making a run for Mount Crushmore. Come on,
up
dude.
there. You put him up there.
The data. He has it. He's got the documents. Dude, I bought so many books during that episode.
You didn't find the one that you really, really wanted.
I wanted that really, 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 really good one. And it's not available because they hate us. No. They hate us because they ain't us.
No, it's just Candace talked about it. She just, I don't know what she's got everybody into her little, it's her, Ian Carroll. Have you guys been watching it lately with Ian Carroll?
Yeah.
He doesn't blink. Yeah.
Yeah, such a weird ass. I mean, like I watch him, I'm like, you don't blink. What is that?
Some
Why
people don't
is
blink
that?
as much. It's like it's a thing.
But he never blinks, ever, ever. I'm
We
like,
we call
blink,
him
dude.
we call him clone.
Oh,
Doppelganger.
Xavier Guerrero, shots fired. Shots fired. Really, really rude, dude. Calling our boy Ian Carroll fucking a clone. Well, that's I mean, dude, on the last episode with Ed Marbury,
Mabry.
Mabry, yeah, that guy. He's talking about how Nimrod's gonna come back as a clone. What? What?
That means it's
Are
here. It's
you
here already.
serious?
It's here already.
Dude, the best thing is like everyone coming out about how Biden's clone. So crazy, dude. Clone, wear masks. I've been saying that forever. Johnny, you don't believe in clones. You don't believe in them. I could tell by the look on your face.
No, I think they're working on something like that, but I don't think it's as widespread as people like the fittest fluffer do.
The fittest fluffer.
Yeah, the fittest fluffer. Yeah.
Dude, that'd be a nice place to put your balls right on that chin.
Okay, well maybe not clone, but what about like a doppelganger? Because you've seen when Biden looks taller than he usually
Oh yeah,
is.
I mean we know that's real. Yeah,
Nephilim Biden was the best.
yeah. I mean, there's people that look like people. I mean, dude, we bring it up all the time.
I
on
wonder if they
Broken
got
Sim.
Barron Trump to do it. And he's like, we just need you to throw on this mask and walk out, wave to everybody.
Could be, yeah. Well, you know, but we talk about it all the time on Broken Sim. There's this. If you don't know about it, there are these two baseball players with the same name. They both play professional baseball. They're both red hair guys that look identical.
And wear
They have the
glasses.
beards trimmed exactly the same. They both wear glasses. They never knew about each other, and they have the same name, and they are not related.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What would you do if you found another Sam Tripoli, just like you?
I'd be
Sam?
like, will you do half these podcasts so I can take a nap? I need a nap. I'm tired. I'm talking, but I'm around all this dirty electricity.
Well, dude,
I sat in here for 5 seconds. She's like, dude, the energy in there's weird. I'm like,
who
yeah,
said that? Who said that?
Dana.
Really?
She's like, I feel all this like energy. I go, yeah, dude, I'm surrounded by dirty electricity. I tell people on my sober meeting, I go, I know a lot of you guys work with your hands. You do an on-stage job. It's really hard, but I am just swimming in dirty energy. Okay, Farmer
Gotta
Johnny.
put some of those rocks in your pocket. Those
Yeah, I do.
anti-EMF rocks, maybe wear one.
Yeah, Johnny, you just broke the internet, dude. I'm gonna go get some of those EMF rocks and put them
You should.
somewhere.
Seriously, just keep one in your pocket. Oh shit. What were we just talking about before that?
How good looking I am.
No, really.
I have just the right size dick.
Oh, you're gonna fuck with me.
Not too
What
big, not too small, just the size of a cannonball.
What were we talking about before?
How smart I am? Johnny, we were talking about dirty electricity.
No, before that. Right before that. Before you started talking about your woes. What was it?
Oh,
the doppelgangers. Right.
I was gonna say that you didn't let me speak.
Oh shit. I can't remember. I was gonna. I hate it when that.
Probably wasn't that important.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's what you have to say. But what if it was like the cure to world hunger?
oh, you would remember that because
I
that's a
don't think
profound
so.
thought.
People say that, but I think that's how they make themselves feel better about forgetting important ideas.
You should, important idea. You should forget that hat, guys. If you guys,
This
if
hat,
you
I
love-
don't care. This hat is sick. I've gotten comments on this hat multiple times on YouTube. Actually,
that looks like something you get at a fucking shrimp bar.
are you crazy, dude? This is
Corduroy, I think, right?
Well, it's corduroy. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is beautiful corduroy. Look,
Yeah.
green. We've got the green.
Johnny, you look like you could hide and no one could see you at a Gap right now. That's what you look like. You could hide at a Gap.
Yeah,
I'm fat.
green.
Listen, guys. You got to go to samtripoli.com. Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, PA, San Diego, Boston, Broadbrook, Kansas City, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and New Orleans. More dates to come.